Dr. Tripp just telling me. He emailed me some details about today, but he came in and bragged that he's got a bigger outline. Of course he would. He's the doctor. He's joining us this morning on Better Health with Tripp Family Medicine. Bill Colley along with you as well. It's 8:34.
Yeah, good morning, and I hope the outline is actually bigger in my brain, but it is on my computer as well.
It's a
So
very nice laptop that he has.
thanks.
So he brings that along with him. You got to carry these things wherever you go anymore. Um, I got to ask you a quick question because sometimes I know this. I've gotten up in the morning and I thought, gee, I don't know if it's angina or whatever else. But we're going to be talking about symptoms of heart attacks. Turned out I was sleeping on a particular mattress, and I used to sleep on my left side,
Right.
and I thought I was having serious angina issues. The doctor could find nothing wrong with me, and then when I switched mattresses, all of a sudden
That heart pain went away.
that pain on that side, shoulder and chest, was gone.
As a perfect example of why this is so hard to say, well, do I need to go to the emergency room? Is this a heart attack, or do I just have a bad mattress? And the answer is don't know till we test, till we find out. And so people often feel like this is an absolute waste of time. It's probably my mattress, or it's this, or it's that. And they most of the time when they have a real heart attack, they're trying to explain it away. And so, my reason for talking about this today, and I titled the day "Serious as a Heart Attack." So this is one that has been uh, showing up in my office a lot lately. Either true heart attacks or things that sure sound like, or smell like, or act like a heart attack. And often there are people that have come in 3 days or 8 days later and said, this just isn't going away. And so I figure I better do something about it. The biggest, scariest thing I can tell you is you have a third of the people that have heart attacks, their first symptom is sudden death. So if you're in that group, you don't have 8 days to hang around and figure this out. On the other hand, about a month ago, and these are experiences within our office. We have a patient, very outdoorsy, stoic guy that is doing some fun stuff up whitewater rafting and spends about 2 days with left shoulder, even some chest pain, some even a little bit of shortness of breath, and is taking aspirin every day just in case. And that is a good beginning, but spent the rest of the time coming down the river and then drove all the way back from north of McCall and came to our office because he called and got an appointment, and the truth is that should have stopped about 3 days earlier and gone to the ER in McCall. And but bottom line is he did have a heart attack, and the truth is he made it, and so that's the good news. And you think, well, if you're a couch potato, that's obvious, but not me, because I get out and I walk and I hike and I hunt and I do this and I do that, and hunting season is upon us, so it's classic for us semi couch potatoes to decide to go out and hike Mount McKinley or something along those lines and find out, we're not in as good a condition as we thought. So really watch for, are you getting that chest tightness? Are you getting short of breath? Are you breaking out into a sweat? Well, of course you're breaking out into a sweat. You're hiking up the mountain. So there's lots of reasons to say don't pay attention. And today I'm here to say pay attention and let's get this checked out. So we're going to talk about men and women and how they are different and well, at least relating to symptoms of heart attack. I don't have time to talk about all the differences.
And the one thing, and I remember my dad had symptoms one night. We were at dinner at a restaurant, and he insisted on driving himself home. And he had a medical textbook, at least on the shelf. Then I read it, and I said, "You're having one." And then he insisted on showering before we went to the
That's
hospital.
right. You want
Which,
to clean up?
sure enough, it turned out that it was exactly what was going on. And then a friend of mine in high school, his dad passed away at the age of 37, and he thought he
Wow.
was having acid reflux. Went to bed and never woke up. So there's a lot of confusion about what might be going, and I think people sometimes are just afraid.
They are. I have had my own medical issues where I thought, well, and I know a lot more than the average non-doctor, and I still want to, be minimize what I think is going on. Why? Because it's about me now. Whereas if I'm the observer, it's easy for me to point at those symptoms just like you did for your dad and say, you meet the criteria, you need to be out of here. And so let's talk a little bit about the criteria. I want to start with women. Excuse me.
We'll open up on this. We got about 30 seconds before the break, so you
All
can
right.
offer a few.
The biggest thing I can say is women may experience heart attacks differently than men, and then we'll come back and talk about why that is. But they definitely do, and I had this yesterday in my office, so it's a good one to start with.
Different physiology, obviously, altogether. And so,
Yeah, and I'm not quite sure all the reasons why. You would say the nerves from the heart and everything are the same, but the truth is women experience it often very differently than men.
very quickly, before we get to the break, what's the telephone number at your office?
Sure, our telephone number is 933-4400. And the truth is, if you think you're having a heart attack, you should be calling the emergency room. But our,
Right.
our number is 933-4400.
And they'll direct you to the emergency room.
Exactly, yeah.
We've got more coming up with Dr. Jonathan Tripp this morning on Better Health with Tripp Family Medicine. Bill Colley handling telephones. It is, call it 8:40. We'll have temperature right now, or got a temperature now of 43, on our way somewhere into the mid 50s. In studio with us, Dr. Jonathan Tripp from Tripp Family Medicine here on News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com. And we're talking symptoms, and we'll get to our telephone callers in a moment, but he's talking symptoms that people have that would be a telltale sign of a heart attack. And as he pointed out just before the break, women have a vastly different reaction than men would have.
Yeah, in fact, let me kind of throw out what the textbook is, because the textbook was written by people, using men in studies because their heart attacks were much more frequent, especially earlier on. And actually, by about age 65, women tend to catch up in the frequency of having heart attacks. So we used to say, well, estrogen must be the reason why they don't have heart attacks earlier. And what we found is that if you're using estrogen, you actually increase your risk of stroke, heart attack, not dramatically, but about 25%. And so, that theory fell out of favor pretty quickly about 2003. Um, but for men, it's chest pain, it's shortness of breath, it's breaking out into sweat, feeling sick to your stomach, and sometimes jaw, neck, or arm pain. And so some of these will be the same. But what I've found with women is they don't read the book. They just don't follow the textbook, and often they will come in with symptoms because I've been an ER doc as well, and they'll come in with symptoms of saying I just don't feel right. That's a hard one to put your finger on. But with that just don't feel right, often there is sick to your stomach, breaking out into a sweat, and feeling kind of lightheaded. So those are some things that you'd say, well, that happens with lots of illness or just a bad day. But this seems to be more profound feeling that I get from the women is that they'll say, this is just there's something not right, and it's a serious not right, and they'll be able to tell me that much. And so with those kind of words, I immediately assume a heart attack till proven otherwise, because usually if you're sick to your stomach, you don't die from being sick to your stomach, but heart attack, that's what we're looking at first. So with women, the number one symptom is chest pain or discomfort. However, like my example yesterday, lady coming in and she says, I just all of a sudden had my arms go heavy and numb both sides, and it just kind of aches through my shoulders. And that's the end of the story. And it doesn't even stay around. It lasts for 3 minutes or 5 minutes. It's never happened before, but it's happened 3 times in the last, several days. And one time I felt sick to my stomach, and one time I had some chest pressure. That is a perfect normal response of most women with a heart attack. So that young lady's being worked up as we speak. She'll have a treadmill today or tomorrow, and we did an EKG and some blood enzymes that show that she hasn't had a heart attack, but she may be literally teetering on the edge of having one.
We have a caller with us. It's 847 on News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com. And of course, you're listening to Better Health with Tripp Family Medicine and Dr. Jonathan Tripp. Bill Colley answering the telephones. And you're on the air with the doctor. Go ahead.
Yeah, doctor, thank you. I appreciate taking my call. The other day you were talking about the, the fallacy of being outside and being cold and catching a cold, and it's caused from a virus. Well, I was just curious of where that virus started. If somebody catches a virus from somebody else, where does it originally start from?
Boy, that is a great question, because the viruses we're talking about are not even in the thousands. They're in the millions of different types of viruses. So they are in a vast or variety of places where they come from. Most of the time for us, we catch it from somebody else. But where did they get it? Probably from somebody else originally. And so I can't really answer that question. Like, was it harbored in the bark of a tree? I don't know. But, even in some reading recently I've done about Alzheimer's disease, we're talking about a variety of viruses that may be part of the inflammatory process going on in the brain that's causing Alzheimer's. In fact, just to throw that out, it's some fun, new, relatively new stuff that we're talking about specific bacteria and a group called spirochetes that seem to infect the body and may be transmitted even through gum disease and get into the brain and cause long-term troubles that later promote Alzheimer's. So viruses are a tough one for me to tell you where they came from, but they are very prevalent, just like bacteria is prevalent and fungus is prevalent. Where do they come from? Well, from their mom and dad, I guess is the best answer I have.
We have another caller with us, and I want to thank the previous caller. Caller, you're on the air with Dr. Tripp.
Hello. I've had three what I call cramps in my right chest, and I get a lot of leg cramps and ankle cramps, so no cramps. Or is that have anything to do with the heart because it's on the other side?
Most of the time we talk about it being left chest, left shoulder, left arm. But it is true if you have other symptoms that go with that cramp that have to do with shortness of breath or breaking out into a sweat or feeling nauseous, I would say absolutely get that checked out. I have my own.
Just a cramp.
What's that? It's just a cramp, huh?
Yeah.
Well, if it truly is just a cramp, you're right. It's probably not the heart. It has much more to do with the muscles, either the what's called the pectoralis or your chest muscle, or even little tiny muscles between the ribs called intercostals that often will give you a cramp, and it can hang on for 10, 15 minutes before it lets go, and it'll get you pretty excited until it lets go.
Want to thank him for chiming in, and that's what we're getting to these symptoms that men are going to have. They appear to be more obvious in many cases.
Sometimes men typically are more obvious. In fact, what's interesting is after you've seen a couple of pretty serious heart attacks, as a physician, you can kind of see it on their face. And like I had another person yesterday who had the right symptoms, and we are definitely doing the workup to prove yay or nay on the heart disease. But as I looked at his face and like the skin not having a lot of sweat to it, not being clammy, they just don't, they have kind of an ashen look. They look ill. And so sometimes people will say, well, I thought I had the flu. But along with the flu comes usually some shortness of breath or chest pressure. So, yeah, men sometimes follow the rules and sometimes they don't, but women less likely to follow the rules. In fact, the women are often the ones that will say, I thought I had the flu. And, women often, they'll chalk it up to symptoms of, life, like less threatening conditions like acid reflux or the flu, or this is just normal part of aging. And they often do it because they're trying to put their family first or their other issues first. The gentleman yesterday I saw, runs his own business. And so even though he's had these problems, when I heard what he was coming in for, we called and said, hey, are you sure you need to come here and not go to the ER? And he says, no, no, no. And we said, well, why don't you come in now? And he says, well, I'm not going to. I'm going to come in at my scheduled appointment time. Why? Because I got stuff to do. And so everybody really does have stuff to do if they're busy and working hard. But these are life-threatening symptoms, so they need to be checked out sooner than later.
Here's the question that I have. I had a friend from high school. He was a track star. Was one of the fastest guys I ever knew. Heavily muscled, but he wasn't heavy in a sense. He was as a body type. He was a smaller fellow, and he ended up going to work after he got out of school for the postal service and spent a lot of time walking. So he always got his exercise. I saw him at my 25th class reunion.
You're not that old, are you?
A little bit more than that.
Okay.
And he was sitting at a table, and he was sitting there, and I walked over to talk to him, and he was explaining that he had been diagnosed within the past year of having had a heart attack, but it was 2 or 3 years before, and he'd never noticed it. And that it had been discovered on a visit to his doctor, an EKG or something was done, and they had discovered he'd had so it was almost a silent heart attack, and he'd gone on with life without even realizing it happened.
And did he slow down because now he's got that diagnosis?
Well, he was still on the job, but they did tell him that there were certain things they didn't want him to do. He obviously wasn't running anymore and doing some of those other activities. he'd been well known for when he was younger.
Well, I'm going to kind of change the direction of the advice he was given because the studies show that the people that work hard, I won't say as hard, but work pretty hard to get back to normal after a heart attack, do the best. So the old days where we said, "Oh no, stay in the hospital, lay in bed for 2 weeks," we did a big disservice to people that had heart attacks. So many people will find out they had a small heart attack on an EKG later in life, never know that they even experienced. They'll spend time looking back and saying, well, maybe that one time is when it happened, but you don't know. And if it's a relatively small portion of the heart, I would say keep your running activities, keep, doing the things you like to do physically active wise. I can only guess that his genetics was against him if he was a postal worker doing a long route every day and, getting that much exercise and still having a heart attack, unless, of course, he added in extra things like smoking. So let me just say if you have had a heart attack, the answer is not to stop life and slow down. It is okay to slow down for a little while that heart actually, it's muscle and it needs a chance to recover. And some of it will never recover if it's really had no blood supply for a while, no oxygen supply. So you'll have a scar on your heart, is what a heart attack ends up being. But the rest of that muscle can recuperate and can be conditioned just like it was to a large degree as if you'd never had a heart attack.
No, when it happened to my dad, he ended up having bypass surgery done, and I think it was quadruple, and a Dacron tube put into one side of his neck because of some clogs.
In the carotid artery, yeah.
But afterward, uh, he had been a smoker. He went cold turkey and quit. He ended up dropping about 70 pounds.
Wow.
Ended up walking 3 miles a day, and swore off alcohol. And he ended up living another 10 years. And 8 of that in pretty good condition, always out on his morning walk, and he was to the point where he was almost manic. Even if it was snowing, he'd go to the mall and walk in the mall. And I had a tough time even then, and I was a much younger guy, keeping up with him some mornings when I would walk with him. So he found ways, even after the surgery, to bounce back. In fact, 6 months later, I helped him mix and pour a concrete sidewalk. So
Excellent.
I think that you're right in one extent. If you were active beforehand, you've got to continue to be active.
Yeah. No, I would. In fact, a lot of people that find their way to exercise and eating better once they face death, and that I wish we could all say, hey, we don't need to face that to get better, but that works for a lot of people, and for some people, they say, well, I've already had a heart attack. Why try? I'm going to keep my smoking, keep my drinking, because just quitting smoking alone reduces your risk of a heart attack by about 50% in 1 year. That's a huge change for your health. That's probably a soapbox I would be on for a full show, is about all the reasons why quitting smoking would be great for you. Um, Let me kind of tell you some of the things we can do. The exercise is definitely a prime example. You've had some of your own experience about losing weight recently that, it's amazing how it can happen if you focus on doing it. And the biggest deal really is diet more than it is exercise. Exercise helps condition the heart, which is what we're talking about today. But food and alcohol in particular and smoking really influence the heart for better or for worse. And so if you can really try to do some things that are look at calories, look for lower calorie stuff. You were giving me some examples off the air about how you found a way to do green chili burritos at home and they have pretty low calorie and they're good. They don't have to be the prefab made ones that have all kinds of extra stuff and extra calories in them and a little bit of lard here and there just for fun. Um, or, you don't have to just live on celery and carrot sticks. You might learn to like them a little better, especially if you add something like hummus or peanut butter to them.
Yeah.
But look for ways to do lower calories. If you will find some of your favorite things have high calorie impact, and it's the high fat and the high sugar that's really giving you trouble. And these are the things that usually contribute to cholesterol or weight related to diabetes, which also speeds up heart disease. So look for making your own stuff instead of using prepared foods. And you'll find there's a lot of good stuff. I did a little experiment last night. My wife said, okay, we're doing salmon tonight. And then she says, go get it out of the freezer, thaw it, and figure out a glaze and make it. So that's how we had salmon last night. I got to figure it out. And of course, her cooking's better, but it was pretty good. And it's not one we've done before.
For people who would like to know a little bit more about your office, we need to point out you're on Facebook as well.
You betcha. On Facebook, it's Tripp Family Medicine. Love to see you like us there. On our website, it's trippfamilymedicine.com. Lots of good information and new patient information you can download from our website and bring it in with you instead of spending 20 minutes in the office. And we are taking new patients all the time. And we have the funnest office. That's not really a word, my wife says, or my mom. But our phone number is area code 208-933-4400, and we are located across the street from the post office on Fillmore.
We'll see you again in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, somewhere in there.
I think we will soon.
Dr. Jonathan Tripp joining us in studio. 9 o'clock news is ahead from Fox, and one more hour of Top Story.